The scale of the devastation is easy to guess from the quantity of provisions they are requesting. This does not look like it will be a short-term situation. They will need repeated infusions of support if there is not to be widespread famine. If they did nothing, tens of thousands of people might starve to death. If that precipitated civil unrest, many more than that might be killed or injured. It could not have been easy for a young woman brought up in the cushy life of the capital to understand what famine meant. Even to Lahan it was a somewhat remote word. He had been in debt up to his neck, but he had never faced starvation. Famine was not beautiful. A starving man or woman, no matter how handsome or lovely they might once have been, would waste away to a dry husk. Muscles and fat would wither, siphoned off by hunger. Lahan had no love for withered things. Even the proudest spirit that had once resided in the most beautiful body could be reduced to a ghost driven mad with hunger. Some claimed that there were those who, though poverty-stricken, were beautiful of heart, but such people were probably just insane. Lahan wanted the world to overflow with beautiful things, and he especially wanted to be surrounded by them himself. He spared no effort in achieving this desire. "All right, well, maybe you can tell me this is Maomao safe?" Yao asked. "I haven't had word from Maomao," he replied. No, there was no word at all. But his father, or rather, judging by the handwriting, his subordinate had written him a letter describing the current situation briefly. It made no mention of Maomao. Lahan took that to mean she was all right. Anyway, if Maomao wrote anything to him, it was likely to be no more than instructions on things she wanted him to procure. He was more concerned that he hadn't received any letters from Rikyusen. If communications had ceased after the swarm struck, he could understand, but the letters had stopped coming months before that. I seriously doubt she has time to be writing letters given how chaotic it must be. And if she does, there must be more important people to write to than some tangential busybody like me. Lahan started counting the days since the swarm. We are 20 days after a major catastrophe. Or one might say it has only been 20 days. Even under normal circumstances, a letter between the western capital and here takes 2 solid weeks to arrive. It is not strange if we haven't heard from her yet, is it? Word of the swarm arrived more than 10 days ago. Yes, and I guarantee a mere court lady does not have access to the same communications network as the imperial family and the most important administrators. Do you think they are going to send a post horse with this anonymous girl's message? Priorities, priorities. Yao was silent at that. Lahan realized he had maybe been a bit harsh, but he did not intend to change tack. He would be happy for these two to regard him as their friend's kindly older brother, but he would not let it cause him to mix personal and public business. NN, at least, must understand that even if Lahan could have supplied them with information, there would not be much they could do with it. If it had been just her, he might have told her everything he knew, but Yao was still maturing emotionally, unlike NN. He didn't want her to do something rash because he had foolishly given her too many details. It was for the best for Yao that he didn't tell her anything. Yao clenched her fists. She understood what he was saying intellectually, but her heart was still catching up. Lahan wasn't doing this merely to torment her. He was simply stating the truth, which merely had the unfortunate side effect of seeming like an attack. It still caused an end to give him a "don't bully my mistress" glare. Her right cheek had risen by 3 millimeters and developed a slight twitch. This, in Lahan's opinion, was what made young ladies such trouble to deal with. It was why he only spent his time with older women, for better or worse. They had been around long enough to know how to comport themselves. By that metric, he and his younger sister Maomao should have gotten along very well, but every time they saw each other, his toes only seemed to end up ever more grievously injured. He had recently ordered special shoes made with steel in the toes to protect himself. They seemed perfect for craftsmen who used heavy materials, or workers who carried heavy objects, and he was already considering whether they might make a viable commercial product. They were only going to lose more time if Yao continued to sit there stewing, so Lahan thought of something he knew she liked. Perhaps you'd take some hazma home with you, just a little souvenir. I got it from a friend, but there's far too much for me to eat by myself. I could use the help. Look, it's dark out, I'll call you a carriage. He let his tone become a bit more friendly as he delicately urged them to go home. But Yao said, "Let us stay here, please." As one, Lahan and Enen responded, "What?" They both looked thoroughly shocked. "Why, young mistress, what do you mean by that?" Enen asked. "Exactly what I said. We've stayed here before, haven't we?" Well, yes, but that was on the pretense of a nice, long vacation. The right shoulder of Yao's rational-minded servant lowered by 6 millimeters. She was concerned. "I haven't read all the medical books in this house yet. I'm not going home until I have, Yao said. You could just borrow them and take a few with you, NN replied, now openly horrified. Even Lahan was starting to feel tense. Why did Yao suddenly want to stay overnight at his house? Was she trying to get him back for not giving her any information? No, she didn't sound like she was doing this maliciously. There would be more murkiness in her voice if she were. I let you stay here last time because there were special circumstances, Lahan said. Maomao helped sell the pretext too, but this time is different. Much as I wish to extend kindness to a couple of young ladies, I won't allow myself to be merely a convenient tool. He tried to be a gentleman, yes, but he was not going to simply let himself be taken advantage of. He wasn't trying to get something in exchange, but those who ravenously devoured whatever they could were decidedly not beautiful. There was a pause, then Yao said, You think I'm just a selfish child making silly demands? Lahan didn't say anything, didn't say yes or no, but the smile that crept across his face should have told them everything. He had plenty of selfishness from his biological mother, with no hint of the sweet child she once was, and he had temper enough from his grandfather. I can see you don't think much of me, Master Lahan, Yao said. You think women just get what they want from men by being coy and demanding. And don't they? He replied without thinking. No, they don't. Believe it or not, I have something to bargain with. What would that be? Lahan blinked exactly 3 times. You know my uncle, don't you? Yes, I should say that I do. Vice Minister Liu, isn't it? Lahan had looked into Yao's and NN's backgrounds the last time they stayed at his house. He had learned about Yao's uncle, an important member of the Board of Rights. He knew that Vice Minister Liu had spent much of his life going from one department to another, and that he was a sharp man. I believe he's in the Western capital at the moment, isn't he? Lahan asked. The Board of Rights was in charge of religious observances and diplomacy. The Moon Prince would need someone with him in the Western capital to help conduct religious ceremonies. No mid-level functionary would do. It had to be a high-ranking member of the board. Do you know why my uncle was obliged to go to the Western capital? Yao asked. In order to help the Moon Prince conduct any necessary observances there, I presume. Not to mention that it would be helpful in a land as close to our borders as I say province, to have someone knowledgeable about diplomacy along. Both those things are true. But what if I told you that he went for the same reason as Dr. Yu? That would tell me nothing. Lahan had no acquaintance with Dr. Yu, so he didn't know what connection he might share with Vice Minister Liu. The only thing he knew about the good doctor was that he was among those who had gone to the Western capital. My uncle lived in the Western capital once when he was younger. He only returned here to assume the family headship when my father died, Yao said. Lahan was careful not to let his expression shift. It was not a bad way to get his attention, not bad at all. Yao wanted him to realize her connection with her uncle allowed her to know something important that he did not. Lahan was Lakan's adopted son, and outwardly he was a member of no particular political faction. With an eye on the future, though, he could very much see himself becoming a backer of the emperor's younger brother. If there was information to be had that would benefit the Moon Prince, Lahan was very interested in acquiring it. But he would have to probe the matter a little more. You grant you have a blood relation with Vice Minister Liu, but so what? I cannot imagine a man as important as the Vice Minister would simply let crucial matters of state slip to anyone, even his niece. Young mistress, I think it's time we gave this up, NN said, distraught. Much as she adored her young mistress, she could see that Lahan was right. Yao, however, ignored her. She said only one word, coal. Coal, Lahan repeated, trying to contextualize it and figure out exactly what significance the word held. You mean the rock that comes from the ground? His eyes widened. Yao grinned. NN looked very confused. Apparently there were things even Yao's omnicapable lady-in-waiting didn't know. Yes, that's it. They can mine it in the Western capital. They can, yes, I've heard that. But they don't because at the moment they have no use for it. Lahan trailed off. Coal was a charcoalized stone that burned readily despite being a rock. It produced a great deal of ash, however. Considering the time and trouble involved in getting it out of the ground, firewood and charcoal had always been seen as better alternatives, supposedly. My uncle was investigating the Western capital's coal. Yes, he is a capable man, but even the most brilliant minister might slip up in a moment of weakness. For example, when his dead brother's daughter had been weeping her eyes out, and he had finally comforted her and gotten her to sleep, he might speak of such a thing, never knowing that she was listening. Yao chuckled and looked at Lahan triumphantly. In other words, you were sleepy, your memories hazy. Such information would hardly be credible, Lahan replied. That brought Yao up short. NN meanwhile raised her hand. Master Lahan, she said. She drew in her chin by 3 centimeters. The way she couldn't decide where to look betrayed her hesitation. Nonetheless, she said, Master Lu went to the western capital before the former emperor met his end. He went before the demise of the former emperor and the empress dowager, whom they called the empress regnant. Given what happened then and after, wouldn't it make sense if Master Lu had gone to investigate something? Lahan opened his eyes 20% wider than usual. He'd assumed that even if NN knew something, she would stay quiet about it. But it seemed that seeing Yao cowed by Lahan's attitude had been more than she could bear. NN was a substantially more competent negotiator than Yao. But in the end, swayed by her love for her mistress, she couldn't help saying something. That's what you think Vice Minister Lu was up to? Lahan asked. The Vice Minister was 40 years old. He had begun his court service under the former emperor, but a man as smart as he was would have known what to do. He faced a choice between continuing to serve the reigning sovereign, a puppet of the empress regnant with scant life left, or aligning himself with the heir apparent. Like Lahan, he would have asked himself what he could do to help give the prince a freer hand at court. It didn't take any calculations to see what would happen when the new ruler took over power from an empress regnant who had conducted puppet politics for so long. Ministers, gorged on power, sometimes acted as if they had forgotten there was a court hierarchy at all. The prince, the man who now sat on the throne as emperor, was well aware of the dangers and had taken measures to neutralize them. Lahan could say this with confidence, not as a rumor, because his honored father Lakan had lent the sovereign to be his aide at the time. Lakan hadn't hesitated to chase his own father and half-brother out in order to secure power. At the same time, he had ensured that several hostile administrators received punitive postings to distant lands. To Lakan, even the emperor no doubt looked like a game piece, a king. Lahan had played his part in all of this. At the time, though, he had been so absorbed in solving the puzzle he had been given, breaking the code, that he hadn't stopped to think what it all meant. Looking back on it now, he wished he had kept a diary or something. Then he might have been able to go back and make a comparison. He was torn. For once he wasn't sure what to do. He wasn't looking for 100% confidence in the information. If it seemed even remotely likely to be useful, then he ought to try to get it. Even if the odds were, say, less than 11%. Whatever the veracity of the information might be, now that he had been given the hint, he would need to investigate. But as far as this information went, investigating it meant throwing Yao and NN out of his house now would mean owing them something later. At the moment, all Yao wanted was to stay there. She wasn't even asking him for all the details about the western capital. He thought to himself, would it really be so bad to let her stay? Yet at the same time, he harbored an anxiety he couldn't name. It was just a feeling, something too faint to quantify in numbers, and Lahan decided to ignore it. Very well, if this annex suits you, you may stay here. However, that is all I'm offering. I will not provide you with any information that might be in violation of my professional duties. You mean it? We can stay? Yao asked, her face growing 30% more cheerful than usual. NN, in contrast, was 55% relieved and 40% uneasy. The remaining 5% was devoted to glowering at Lahan. Why would she give him such a scathing look? Lahan felt very much the innocent victim here. Later, Lahan would learn the true meaning of NN's glare. He would have further cause to regret allowing Yao to stay in his home, but he couldn't know that now. Not at this stage. Chapter 7, The Letters That Arrived. Day 20. Bandits have appeared all over Isay province. The soldiers stationed in the farming villages seem to be quite busy. Day 21. Lahan's brother is renovating one of the storage rooms. Apparently he is building something. Day 25. Supplies have arrived from the central region, much sooner than expected. In addition to food, there is a bit of medicine included, but still not enough. Day 27. Some stores are beginning to open. However, stock is still minimal, and low-quality items are rampant. Day 28. There is an increase in patients complaining of bleeding from the gums. It is suspected malnutrition from a lack of fruits and vegetables. Day 32. The cooks in the kitchen tried their hand at grasshopper dishes, but it didn't go well. We are grateful for the occasional side of duck egg. It's a rare and precious source of nutrients. Day 37. Lahan's brother was playing with the duck in front of his storage room. The duck wanted to get in and he was trying to keep it out. Strangely, despite the species difference, they seemed to be having a successful conversation. What are you doing playing with that duck? Who's playing? Come here and help me catch Jofu. Please come on. It was the first time Maomao had heard anyone but Basin use the animal's name. Lahan's brother and Basin hadn't talked much in the farming village, but maybe the duck had been a shared point of conversation for them. Anyway, Maomao dutifully scooped the duck up from behind. The humans might be suffering from malnutrition, but the bird was fat and boasted lustrous feathers. If Jofu had dared to step out the mansion's gate, she would have soon found herself on someone's dinner table. Maomao had to restrain herself from wringing the animal's neck by constantly reminding herself that ducks laid eggs. She certainly seems to want to get in the storage room. Is there something in there? Maomao asked. Here. This is what I've been making, Lahan's brother said. He opened the door. In a corner of the room, Maomao saw a black curtain. Lahan's brother pulled it back to reveal a pile of trays. They had water in them and some kind of seed. The seed had sucked up the water and was sprouting. Bean sprouts, she asked. Exactly. This estate has a pond. I thought it might be worth a shot. I'd prefer some nice running water, but we all know how precious water is here. What are these seeds? They don't look like mung or soybeans. Mung beans could be used to make noodles and for medicinal purposes in addition to producing sprouts. Soybeans, well, the benefits need hardly be enumerated. Burr clover, he replied. It's used as fodder for horses, but I heard that humans can consume the fresh buds, so I thought it would be worth growing. I brought the seeds back with my grain. Oh, that's what that was? Maomao asked. She remembered now that Lahan's brother had had several bags strapped to his body. The wheat was so striking that she had forgotten about the others, but she saw now that Lahan's brother had hardly met a seed he didn't want to try cultivating. Yes, that's right. And Jofu is so perceptive that she's been trying to eat them since before I planted them. Hey, you, yes you, don't Basin and Baryu share their food with you? Not enough, you want some more. Just you try it, you little. Lahan's brother gave the duck a bop on the head. They could have been two lovers in a painted scroll. Did the duck's guardian, Basin, know what they were getting up to? I'm surprised. Not many people know Master Baryu personally. Even Maomao had found him no more congenial than a stray cat when they had encountered each other. Ah, yes. Once when I was summoned after coming back to the Western capital, he passed me a letter from behind his curtain with some words of appreciation. I think it was the kindest thing anyone has done for me since I got here. I like to think I try to be decent to you, Lahan's brother. She'd just been busy lately and hadn't gotten around to doing anything specifically nice. That's a crock. But in any case, yes, I gave Miss Chu a written reply, and I received another letter after that. Since then we have had quite the correspondence. A messenger sparrow. Maomao could just see Chu flitting back and forth like her namesake, letters in hand. Well, sometimes Jofu takes them. The duck carries your letters. Maomao, deeply suspicious, looked at the bird in her arms. Jofu was giving her puppy dog eyes as if in hopes that she would soon put her down. Since Lahan's brother had closed and locked the storage room again, she decided she could let her go. She put the duck down and it waddled off. Maomao said, I can't help thinking you seem to do your best work when no one is looking, Lahan's brother. That's a pretty backhanded compliment. It is a compliment. But listen, more important things, how many more of these bean sprouts can you grow? If the answer was a lot, it would help a little with the malnutrition situation. The seeds in the storage room represent my entire supply right now. They aren't rare though. We could visit the nearby villages and ask if anyone has burr clover. I've heard rainy season is the best time for this plant, so people might have more than you'd think right now. Do you think you could gather as many as possible? I want everyone at the food distributions to get bean sprouts in their soup. Of course, what went into the food was Maomao's decision. She planned to discuss it with Jinshi. Lahan's brother asked, the seeds are only half the problem. What do we do about water? Assuming we get enough seeds to dry up the pond, I think we can worry about that later. Also, I wouldn't mind some soybeans or mung beans either. Good point. Even if we're lucky, it will only be a small improvement to the overall problem. Lahan's brother seemed to be working on several different things besides the bean sprouts. He was turning a corner of the annex's garden into a field. Maomao liked to imagine he had gotten permission to do so. Meanwhile, Chu was building a goat shed. Maomao hoped Jaekyun wouldn't be too surprised when he returned to the Western capital. By the way, Lahan's little sister, I'm sorry, what did you call me? Maomao looked as though she was ready to spit in his face. Oh, spare me. I'm pretty sure I saw someone going to the medical office. Don't you need to check on them? Do you trust that old doctor all by himself? Point taken, I am worried, so I'll be going. She gave Lahan's brother a little wave and headed for the medical office. Well, fancy seeing you here, she said when she arrived. Tianyu was waiting in the office. We're out of medicine, he said. Oh, you are you? Aha. He gave her an expectant look. What did he want from her? The lax, easygoing man had acquired a tan from the desert sun.